auto bed leveling on the Voxelab Aquila. Let's dive into that next. Hey everyone, welcome back to the corner. It's me, Jeff. This time around, I have my Voxelab Aquila, which is basically an Ender 3v2 clone. And I actually purchased up a 3D Touch, which is basically a BLtouch clone. And we're going to try to install this. So we're going to get some auto bed leveling going. This is a tiny little 3D Touch. I'm going to bring you closer and we're going to have a look at this right now. So this is the Aquila here. As you can see right here, there are two mounting holes here, and Aquila actually does have a firmware available. I did print this mounting bracket out of PETG, so we're going to use this, and we're going to attempt to install this right here, and I'm going to use some M6s in order to mount this. So I'll start with the mounting process, and we're just going to, there's already pre-tapped, pre-screwed holes here, so we're just going to see if we can get those in there. Okay, we want to make sure that our carriage still moves properly.
So I'll be mounting the BLtouch with a M8 screws, because the ones that came with my kit are, I think they're M12 or M14, so they're a bit too long anyways. Now that the BLtouch is mounted, don't do what I did. I have the short wire on the BLtouch. I didn't look at the connectors and I thought they would both connect together, the 1 meter wire and the short wire. They do not, so I had to actually remove this and attach the 1 meter wire to the BLtouch.
Let's take a look inside here, shall we? So the BLtouch actually goes right in here. I don't know if you can see that. There's the one port right here that it goes into. Is it labeled BLtouch? Yeah, it's just under the screen. And it says ground, volt in, ground out. All right. So if I'm following this right, the 3-pin is the brown, goes to the ground. So ground, volt is the red, orange is the control signal, mine's yellow, so that's the in, and then the ground is the black, and the white is the out. See if I can take a picture for you. Alright, so I got this hooked up, and I am going to basically just zip tie my wires in with the other wires.
So after I've done this, I realized that it's very tight. It's doable, it's workable, but it's very tight. So just be aware of that when you bundle the BLtouch in with these wires. A better solution might be to run it off the side and upwards towards where the extruder is and come up with some sort of mount that way. I haven't gotten there yet because it seems to be working well the way it is. It's just very tight, just to let you know.
So now that we're done with the hardware modifications, it's on to the software. We're going to go to the voxelab3dp.com and we're going to navigate over to their download category. And in that, you will find the Aquila BLtouch version 3.1 or 3.1.1 and the DWIN set. You're going to go ahead and you're going to download this. And we're going to save this. And once it's downloaded, it comes up with this funky name. So we're just going to extract this. and we'll have this file. We're going to have the README, we're going to have the Aquila bin file, which is the firmware, and the DWIN set. So we're going to open up the README, and we're going to do all this stuff. We're going to insert our card, our micro SD card, into our card reader. We're going to create a folder named firmware. So we're going to open up our removable disk, which is right here. And it says you need to create a new folder named firmware. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to new folder, we're going to call it firmware. And after that, it says to put the bin file, which is this one right here, into that firmware folder. So here's that bin file, here's the firmware folder, and then we need to, we're going to disconnect it, and we're going to update the firmware on our Aquila.
Okay, so I have the card here. We're going to put the card in. We're going to turn on. BLtouch is working. The screen is white. The bar is loading. We have a green check mark. That's a good thing. Print control settings. Let's see here. BLtouch auto leveling, auto home. I do still need to do one more step on this. We got 3.1.1, so we're good there.
So now that we've updated the firmware, we need to update the screen firmware. So it says extract the DWIN package set, insert the TF card into the TF reader, connect the card to the computer. We've done that. The first time you update, please format the TF card. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go and we're going to format the card that we just had in there, right? Let's do this properly here. So we're going to format the card. Now there's something special about this. It says you want to if it's the first time you update, please format the card. Set the allocation unit size to 4096. So here's our card we're going to format. So you want to go down here and set this to 4096. Then you're going to start, and you're going to format it. Once your format's complete, it says you want to put the DWIN set on the TF card. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to go over here. We're going to copy this DWIN set. And we're going to paste it on there. So now we have the DWIN set right there. And that is it. And now we're going to go install this into the screen, and I'm going to show you that in a second.
So the next step is we're going to take the screen apart here. So what you need to do is there are some pressure fit clamps. There we go. All right. So with the screen here, what we're going to do is we're going to remove these 4 screws. Now we need to just kind of pry this open a little bit. Not too much, just enough. And you see on the back here, there's an SD card slot. We're going to take our SD card. Okay, so it will click. You want to attach the screen back. I took my screen off for easier to sort of look at. All right, so we got the screen here. It says power on. We're going to power on. Blue. It should turn red. It's red, so now it's done. Turn this off. We're going to remove the card. We're going to reattach. We're going to detach the screen for now. We have all our screws. You're going to make sure that your screen hole lines up. right. Put this all back together. Plug the screen back in. Back onto our clamps. We'll turn our machine back on. And we should be able to see some sort of BLtouch auto leveling. See, it goes through all the points. I've done the BLtouch level. Now we're going to go to print. And it should be doing its thing. There we go.
And this is where I had an issue with the BLtouch, is I noticed that the Z offset wasn't responsive through the screen. So I used the manual Z offset fix from 3DMN. Hopefully you'll find it useful.
We have the Aquila hooked up with the BLtouch, but when we go to print, using the Z offset on the screen for the Aquila, it's not lowering and it's not working. It's just printing in the air. So we're going to fix that now with Pronterface. So what you're going to do is you're going to connect to your Aquila, and you're going to use the 1115-200 baud rate. And what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is, obviously we're going to connect. Then we're going to home our printer. Once our printer's homed, we're going to call out an M851Z0. So that's going to reset our Z offset to 0. Okay. Then we're going to save that. We're going to do an M501, M503. Sorry. Yeah, just wait for the printer to catch up. And there we go. So our Z offset is actually at 0 right now. This is where we want it to be, right here. So we've just homed our printer again. So now we're going to go, we're going to do a true Z offset, or where the computer thinks the true, or the printer thinks the true Z offset is. Okay, so we've got that done. Now we're going to turn off the soft end stops. And what that's going to allow us to do is to go below 0 on our Z. So we'll be able to do our level right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a piece of paper. Matter of fact, it's the instruction paper for the BLtouch, or the 3D Touch, I should say. And we're going to now, through Pronterface, I'm going to try to level this. So we're going to drop this down to 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, 2.8. It looks like it's my magic number. So I'll probably just bump it to 2.81, 2.82, something like that. So now when we've done that, we're going to set our Z offset at what I just said, M851. And our Z offset is minus 2.81, I believe I said. Oh, hang on. I always do that, don't I? M851, Z is minus 2.81. Okay, so now that's what our Z offset is. Now we're going to turn off our soft end stop so we don't accidentally destroy our bed by dropping our nozzle into it too far. We're going to save it. We're going to do an M501 to do the active parameters, and an M503 to double check we have it saved at 2.81, which is perfect. Now we're going to test it. We're going to do that G1, F60, and set 0. Now, if this works, or actually, hang on. Let's do a G28 first. So we're going to home all accesses again. And once it does that, then we're going to test it with the G1, F60, set 0 command.
So this is actually a really good trick to use with BLtouch or without BLtouch, just to find what your true Z offset is. And a big shout out to 3DMN for this tip. And this is a very good reason why using Pronterface helps out tremendously troubleshooting.
So I did manage to get BLtouch working with the Aquila stock firmware, but I did run into several problems along the way. The first one was I noticed that the Z offset wasn't working. I would go down to -2, -3, -4, -5, and so on, and it still wasn't bringing the Z down. So that's what I did in Pronterface. It seemed to work, but then I noticed diving into Pronterface and doing another bed level on this, what's supposed to happen is when you press the BLtouch bed leveling, it calls for a G29 code, and then it starts the auto leveling process on the bed. When it's done that, it's supposed to call for an M500 to save. As you can see right here in the screenshot, sorry, it was just a screen cap of my phone real quick. It didn't call for the M500, so it actually didn't save the mesh. So it would do the mesh, but it wouldn't save it, and then you'd be printing just the way your bed was leveled, so you were getting uneven layers. And then lastly, I noticed that after several times of reflashing the firmware and trying it again, is that it would clear the EEPROM. So I would flash the firmware and I would run an M501 to load from the EEPROM, and it would have the Z offset, the probe Z offset, still in there as a minus 2.71 for me, which was not a, for me it's not a big deal, but if you're playing around with this and say you were trying to fix your Z offset and you're going -2, -3, -4, -5, and it wasn't working for you, and then you reflash the firmware and it kept that Z offset but was now working, you would give yourself a nice little gouge in the bed or something like that. So I would suggest when you run this, you hook it up to Pronterface and make sure you're going to get your mesh after it's done, and it's going to M500 you, so you know it's saved to your EEPROM, so you have your mesh in there and it's good to go. And then always double check your Z offset on your screen before, as soon as you start your print, so you can cancel it out right away if you have it set too high or whatever. So that was my experience with the Aquila for their BLtouch leveling. Also, one more thing, you can't put a G29 in your start code, or else this will happen, and it actually won't print after that, or at least in my experience, will not print after that. So, is upgrading your firmware on the Aquila worth it? Yes. Is it? But see, this is kind of where I'm hesitant on, because as you guys know from my previous videos, I like to install custom firmwares. I am always under the belief that it should be easier for the end user to install firmware from the manufacturer rather than a third party being an easier process to install and set up. Now with the Aquila, as I say, I had some problems. Like, it might only be me, but that's, I guess it's good that it was me so we could experience that. And it was a pain in the butt. It really was a pain in the butt to get this going with the BLtouch. There's a much easier way to do it, or at least a much more less buggy way to do that. And I'm going to show you that next.
Alex has put together this amazing custom firmware for the Aquilas. I'm going to show you where to get this firmware. I've talked to Alex over the past couple of weeks. We've gone back and forth, and he's helped me with various issues that I had with the Voxelab firmware. He's been showing me the firmware he developed, and I gotta say, this is awesome. So basically what he's done is he's taken the Creality firmware and branched it off himself, and then sort of put some Voxelab and Aquila touches to it. And of course, Alex, if you're listening to this, please, thank you so much for doing this for the community. You rock. So we're gonna go to GitHub, AlexQZD/Marlin releases. I'll put the link below, and you're going to see a couple of Aquila firmware. He's just updated this new build a few days ago at the time of this video. So there's 2 in here. There's the Aquila no BLtouch and BLtouch enabled. Now you can download whichever one you want. I need it for the BLtouch. So what you're going to do is you're going to drop down where it says assets here, and you're going to click on that little arrow, and that's going to open up what you require. He's got a few bins in here. So I'm going to take the enabled 4x4 for the leveling. So it's going to be a 4x4 leveling pattern, and I'm just going to download that. Now, this will be the firmware for the printer. We're still going to need the screen firmware though. So I'm going to go onto the source code, and I'm going to download this as well. And once my downloads are complete, I'm going to show you kind of what to do. It's exactly the same as what we did earlier in the video with the Voxelab firmware. Once you have this downloaded, go into your downloads or wherever it is that your computer downloads it to. And you'll see the firmware and you'll see the BLtouch. Now, I've done this a few times before, that's why I have the 1 there. What you're going to do is extract it to however you extract stuff to. Take a minute and it's going to extract everything. Okay, so once you're done that, in the meantime, what you can do is, it's the exact same. On your removable disk or your micro SD card, you're going to set up a new folder for firmware. And then all you're going to do is you're going to go to your downloads. You're going to take that firmware that we downloaded from Alex's site, and we're going to drop that into our firmware folder. And that's it for the firmware part. Now remember, you have to make sure that you're still formatting your SD card with the specific parameters that you saw earlier in the video. So once this is unzipped or unextracted, or however you get it to the point where you can go into it, you're going to go into the file, and you're going to go down to where it says display firmware. And that's where your DWIN set's going to be, okay, which is right here. And you're just going to copy that folder onto your card. So you'll have the firmware and the DWIN set, okay? That is all you need. And then you can flash your firmware on your screen and flash your firmware to your Aquila, and you should be set. And let's go do that right now.
So yeah, so this is going to be Alejandro's firmware, and I'm so sorry if I butchered your name so many times in this video. I really do apologize. So let's see if we can get it loaded up here. I've already flashed the screen. So what it's going to do is, it is hopefully going to flash the firmware. And we have the firmware flashed, and look at that. That is awesome. So he's actually branded this now. Where's that offset? Is at 0 where it's supposed to be, which is awesome. Oh, he's got baby stepping in here. This is beautiful. Sorry, I don't have the screen hooked up yet because I wanted to make sure it was working before I did. Control, temperature, motion, advanced, store settings, restore. Probe offset is fine. Oh, he's got a bunch of stuff in here. That's awesome. Nice. Yeah, I'm really happy actually. Here, let's actually see what the splash screen looks like. See, nice Voxelab, nice straightforward. Look at that. Perfect, beautiful. I can even go to level. That's the other level. Oh, yes, I know my bed's not hot right now, but that's really not the point. The point is to see if it actually works without any issues whatsoever. So big thanks to Alejandro for putting this firmware together for us. He did a great job with it. It looks great. It looks crisp. It's very responsive. I guess, you know, Voxelab, I will try your firmwares again in the future, but for right now, I think they're just a bit too buggy. As I said, I had a bunch of issues with them. That was my end user experience. This seems to be a much smoother end user experience. So yeah, I guess that's where I stand. I'm going to be leaving this firmware on here for a while. Again, big thanks to Alejandro because he helped me troubleshoot a lot of my problems that I was having with the Aquila firmware, and he pointed out a few inconsistencies, let's say, in their firmware that might cause problems. So I did have the previous version of Alejandro's firmware on here, and it was working really well. You'll see the Baby Yoda I printed. Came out great. And yeah, like, what do you want me to say? I'm going to be sticking with this for a while, okay? So I'm hoping Voxelab does some things to improve the stability of their firmware and get their bugs out. But yeah, as you're on the BLtouch level screen, if you look by the red bar, you'll see that Alejandro told me it points to the, I'm not a code guy, I don't know, but their DWIN set points to the wrong area or whatever, so that's why you get the messed up graphics on there. So if you're releasing a firmware that's got bugs in it already, yeah, you're gonna get a few problems, right? So if you like this video, please leave a comment below, give me a thumbs up, and please hit subscribe if you frequent the channel but you're not already a subscriber. That would help me out too. And until next time, guys, peace out.